so welcome everybody to Entre Comillas. I'm Eileen Acosta, your host for this podcast, and today we are dedicating and celebrating a very special Latino voice. In this episode, we have a very special guest with us named Councilmember Eunisses Hernandez. I should start that over. I felt like I messed that up. No, you're good.
You did.
We have an amazing guest with us today, Councilmember Eunisses Hernandez for District 1. Thank you so much for being here, Eunisses. I am incredibly grateful that you are here and that you're willing to share your time with us and answer some great questions. Well, I hope you think they're great questions.
Yes, so far, yes.
And let us start. So the very first question that I have for you is if you can share a little bit about your background and what brought you to this point as a council member for District 1 and what motivated you to get to where you're at currently.
Thank you, Eileen, for that question, and thank you for having me. I grew up in Highland Park and have lived there my entire life, and it wasn't a community that looks like what it looks like now. It was very low income. It impacted a lot by violence, gang impacted, a lot of gang injunctions. It was a community that didn't have a lot of investment in it. And throughout the time, it's changed. It looks completely different now. The businesses, the people who live there. And so I saw all of that growing up. I grew up, a lot of my friends were impacted by problematic substance use, mental health needs. Many of them went to go fight in the Iraq and Afghanistan war and came back with mental health needs and problematic substance use. Some of my closest loved ones were impacted by those things. I'm a survivor of harm and violence. And that's my background of growing up. Obviously, that's not it's not I had a lot of happy moments, a lot of enriching moments, but these are the experiences that formulated, why I do what I do today. I spent about a decade working on policy and different campaigns through different organizations. And so at first I wanted to be a cop, because I'm a survivor of harm and violence. During the recession in 2008, we had to bring people into my home so that they can rent rooms so that we could pay the mortgage, pawn off my mom's jewelry so we could pay the mortgage. And a lot of people were struggling during that time. And it was around that time also where I started having these experiences of having to call 911, law enforcement showing up and not supporting, seeing my friends get incarcerated instead of getting support. And I thought, I was like, okay, I could be the cop that would have helped me, that would have stopped that interaction, that instead of taking my friend to jail for selling weed, that they would have gotten some support or housing, understanding that he was impacted by the foster care system and needed support. And in school, I learned, I was like, there's vocabulary to this stuff. There's definitions. There's data to the things that I was seeing growing up. So it wasn't just happening here, but it was systemic. And that's also when I realized that I couldn't go into the carceral system because I wouldn't change it. And so it took me a while to find a job. I was at Universal Studios in valet. I was a valet supervisor for a while.
You were hustling out there.
Yep, and you had to. My first job was Chuck E. Cheese, but ever since I could, I was working because we had to. And but I finally got a job with the Drug Policy Alliance as an intern, a criminal justice intern, and that started my journey around policy because I had no idea. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach. Most of my teachers were professors my professors were former cops, former law enforcement. So I was really trained up to do that.
So what changed ultimately? What made you get into local policy and becoming a council member or even wanting to run for a council member?
Yeah, so I had been doing policy work since the Drug Policy Alliance, other organizations, Just Leadership USA. I was with the Justice LA Coalition. I co-founded my own nonprofit, La Defensa, all around criminal justice reform, abolition. La Defensa works on getting progressive lawyers elected as judges in LA County. I created that nonprofit because with my colleague Yvette Ale, because for years we had been working on legislative policies at the state level, at the county level, but it was the judges who were being the blockade to actually implementing these things. Yeah. And then COVID hit. Yeah. And COVID as a political strategist, organizer, it was one of the biggest political windows to achieve a lot, to help our communities and to make them permanent. And so, I thought about running for office, because of the work we did and the proximity to legislators and how all the good stuff comes from the community. Yeah. Good stuff doesn't come from bureaucracy. Community pushes the government. So like I thought about it, but I was like, I'll quote unquote wait my turn.
Yeah.
I want to run locally, but I'll wait my turn. And then when I saw the lack of urgency during COVID, when I saw the same señoras getting the recycling from our trash bins and not seeing them get any support, like seeing and feeling the displacement that was happening in my community, I was like, if we don't do something, many people are not going to survive another 4 years to be able to live in the city of Los Angeles or have housing in the city of Los Angeles. So I was like, you know what? We have to try. And so that's why I decided to run very late in 2021. But I decided to run because no one was running against him that could take this political giant out.
Who were you running against?
I was running against Gil Cedillo.
Oh, really? How long had he been in his office?
He had been representing the district for 9 years, but he comes from a long trajectory of working with the unions and also being a state legislator.
Okay.
And he has done good things, but for our district for the last 9 years, all that was happening was there was a big for sale sign on the land of our district.
What was the process of you? First of all, was it very alien to you, like almost getting into this process of deciding to like run? Because I'm sure that was incredibly difficult. That took a lot of organizing. Who were the people that you surrounded yourself with at that time to like try to get into this? Because I mean, there's a lot of people who aspire to be part of politics and their local government, but they don't know how. So how did you do this? How did you become, someone who was out here hustling, like being, working for Universal Studios as a valet, working at Chuck E. Cheese, and then all this different stuff. How did you, and then making this amazing nonprofit, and then all this. So what were the steps in getting to that? Did it feel overwhelming to you? And at the same time, when you did decide to run, what were the steps that it took to finally get the seat as, council member of District 1, which is one of LA's biggest districts,
Yes.
So you have quite a response, wow.
Yes, it's heavy. It's heavy. We represent 250,000 people at least in over 22 neighborhoods. But I had involved myself in policy work, right?
Right.
So again, being in proximity to legislators. But I will say that running for office, it was like walking into a room with no light because I just didn't have any direction.
Right.
I helped co-write a ballot initiative and co-led that campaign of what's called Measure J in 2020. So if people don't know about it, please look it up because it's one of the only times we have been successful as community in moving our tax money back into community.
Gotcha.
And I learned of, consultants that run ballot initiatives, fundraise for ballot initiatives. There's a whole industry of people making money off of getting people elected. Yeah. Some people do it just for the money, and some people do it because they want to make transformative change. Right. And, there was a tweet early in 2021 where Gil Cedillo touted the endorsement of Bernie Sanders, and I couldn't believe it. But it's also a tactic to show, other progressives, I got the most progressive endorsement. Don't even think about running against me.
Got you.
And it was in that moment where I raised my hand on Twitter of who's going to do this? Who's going to run against him? And I haphazardly tweeted raising my hand. And after that, consultants started hitting me up from everywhere. Different consultant companies saying, hey, we're looking at the analysis. You could win, you could beat him. Most of the people reaching out to me were men, older men that couldn't connect and align myself with. And so I luckily ended up getting connected with some organizers at Ground Game, and they have connected me with my campaign manager, Megan Choi. Wow. That's when I was able to see, okay, that's how I started learning that, because it is you walk into a room, there was no light, so I didn't even know who to trust, who I wanted to work with, and that was very scary because you're about to do something that could be life changing for you, and you want to make sure that the people you're working with are the future that you want to see. So that's why most of my team was femmes, our leaders, women of color. Most of our folks were from the district that were knocking on doors. I was trying to be very intentional, but it is a very if you're not plugged in, it can be very hard to imagine how to do that. And for my fundraisers, because you need a campaign manager, you need a field director, you need canvassers, you need an event organizer, you need fundraisers. And luckily, the work that I had done for a decade helped me build a community of people that I checked in with, is this something I should do? Should I leave this work that we're doing? I just launched this nonprofit with my colleague should I leave that to go inside, to not even go inside, to try to go inside? Because we were going against a Goliath. Like, no one expected us to win. Yeah. Nobody. And so it was a lot of just checking in with my community to see if this is something that, you know, was worthwhile for everybody. Because we just had so much on the line: pretrial reform, implementing Measure J, closing down Men's Central Jail, continuing to get progressive lawyers elected. Last year was the first one that got elected, a first LA County public defender elected in LA County. I left all that and had to check in with people so I could try this, but it was difficult. The campaigning was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And I've run a campaign of Measure J and others, but because this is you. You know, you're the one that's asked the questions. And I'm an expert in what I know I am an expert in, which is criminal justice reform, abolitionist work. Yeah. But when you're a politician, you have to learn about, even when you're running for office, you have to learn about everything. Housing, affordable housing, planning laws, like environmental justice. Yeah. So it was also like a big learning curve of like the topics that you have to learn about, but also how you have to interact with community and present yourself and be able to talk about it from, I think, a very grounded way, which was hard. But what we did, I'll just pass it to you after this if you'd like. But what we did is, you know, we beat Gil Cedillo in the primary. Oh, wow. Which has only been done 3 times in the history of the city of Los Angeles. And that is because I think our team was so phenomenal. Most of the money we generated, we're able to get, you know, donated. It went to knock on doors. We knocked on 67,000 doors. From
67,000 doors?
Yes, from October to June. Oh my God. And even then, about only 16,200 and something people. Like there was a lot of people that voted. We increased the voter turnout of our district tremendously, but I think the total votes I got was about over 16,000, which means it took us 67,000 doors to generate 16,000 votes, which means that our folks are not engaged, they're not voting. Yeah. Yet they're paying taxes every check. Every year they're paying taxes. They live here. I just want to uplift that as like, y'all have to plug in, because the things that you're experiencing locally, your street lights, your street conditions, the trash, those are all political decisions, all budget decisions, and that people have a real impact. But the people who are winning in the city of Los Angeles right now are special interest groups, the apartment associations, law enforcement unions. They are like the policies and the budgets mostly support what they want to see in our communities, not what our community members want to see.
Was it shocking for you seeing just how much of our community is just not engaged with politics? I mean, I see it here in my own city. Like, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. So not too long ago, we had like a Latino heritage parade. I have lived in Pasadena all my life. I did not know there was even a Latino heritage parade. I didn't know that. The only one I knew about was the Black History Parade, right? But it kind of gave me a moment of like, I come from an immigrant household. Our family, the only people we communicate with are our own family members, really, right? And I think it comes from that mentality of like, I can't trust anyone really outside of my family or like my immediate, you know, maybe friends or people from church or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. It's very hard for, at least from what I've seen from my own family, for them to be part of community initiatives. It's and if they do find out about it, it's usually through the younger generation, you know, that they even have these resources available. So in your experience, having knocked on 67,000 doors in your own community, was it shocking for you having seen just, you know, that a lot of people knew that they had this much power to enact change in their own community?
Yes, it's really sad, honestly, because now being on the inside, you see the power that special interest groups have. Yeah. And when people don't vote, it just leaves a void for special interest groups to fill in. Yeah. Think about who's winning right now. Yeah. What's going up? Rent. Yeah. Who wins? Landlords. Yeah. What's going on a lot right now? Development. Not affordable development, mostly market and luxury rate development. Who's winning there? Developers. Yeah. A quarter of our city budget goes to LAPD. People say they don't feel safe, but who's winning here? LAPD. And so these are political decisions that are very much influenced by the power of special interest groups. And I'll say, even just recently, I was door knocking because Los Angeles had an emergency renters assistance program, and the application was only open for a couple weeks. So we went into one of our one of our neighborhoods that was heavily impacted by eviction filings, and knocked on 300 doors. And people didn't even know. People like you and I who speak English, who were born here, had no idea that this emergency renters assistance program existed, and they were like, oh my God, I need this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm behind on rent. And so that for me, that just shows like the government is lacking in doing outreach to community.
Yeah.
Because what we do as communities, we meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
Whether it's on their phone, whether it's at the doors, whether it's you got to use all the tools to connect with the people. And the way that I've seen engagement on the government side is that it's lacking very much,
it very
even
much
with
is.
language access. So
and you know what's something, because I work for the city. Part of my job also working for my own city, right? And kind of just highlighting the events and the stuff that they do. And not like, I always wondered, because the city of Pasadena has its own page, right, to give like people information and all this different stuff. But I was curious to see if the city of LA had something similar, because at the end of the day, we are part of LA County as well. I mean, when it comes to Long Beach and Pasadena, we're kind of like the orbiting like kids around LA, but we still, take action from LA County. And I always wonder, I'm like, does LA County have like this page or somewhere where people can just go to and get these information, these resources? And I really didn't see anything. And I was just like, wow, for a city as big as Los Angeles, with as many people as it has, I'm just surprised that there's like not that one place that people can look to for general information, which is why I feel like what you just told me is just, it's huge. The fact that you have made yourself available to be kind of that resource as well for the people of your district, that's huge,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm amazed
Thank
by
you.
it. Now, moving on to a couple more questions, because I do have a lot of questions for the council member. I'm gonna try not to overwhelm her though.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, what were some key turning points in your journey, like that you think is important to mention?
I think a turning point that I'd like to mention is when I decided to try to fight for as much as possible and everything towards the goal of abolition. Yeah. Because I've been doing policy work for about a decade. I worked on policies that, in order for them to pass, there was compromise that was made. Yeah. And the compromise was that this group of people would benefit from the reform. This other group of people would not be eligible and would not benefit from the reform. Right. And so we left people behind. Yeah. And, that was okay to, like, if that was, at that time, that was okay. That I didn't have more of an understanding of what the impact was. The more I worked with people and took the lead from people who were formerly incarcerated, who were impacted by the carceral system, the more that it was shown to me, like, we cannot afford to leave people behind. Right. And so working with organizations like Critical Resistance and Justice LA, to really understand, like, how do we make decisions that don't leave people behind? Right. So when we when we started fighting against the jail construction plan that LA County had to build 2 jails worth $3.5 billion at least, one for women in the desert 50 miles away and one for people with mental health needs in Chinatown. The questions for us every time there was a moment of compromise or decision, is this decision going to leave anybody behind? Right. Is this decision going to build something that will have to destroy in the future? Like the empty Lincoln Heights jail that sits in my district, or like a program that instead of helping people funnels more people into the carceral system. Yeah. Or does this decision give more money and more power to the systems that harm us? Yeah. And so if it's yes to any of those questions, we go back to the drawing board. Right. And that, I think, has made me a better organizer. I think it's made my colleagues better organizers, because it makes us, one, have to work harder to bring more people on board to our vision, and it requires us to strategize deeper. Like, if this where we're at right now is not going to get us to where we need to be on these questions, then we're going to have to re-strategize and rework. And that made us stronger, helped us fight smarter, and helped us build a bigger coalition. So I think I want to uplift that, because it's important to be able to evolve the way you think. Right. When you have more information, more experience, more understanding, more experiences around you of different people. And especially in this work where it's really important to take the lead of people who are directly impacted and or formerly incarcerated. So because people always like, oh, you're like, what does it mean to be an abolitionist? Oh, you're an abolitionist. Like, oh, it's like
already it's like a scary word.
Yeah, people get like just really turned off and scared, but it's like, abolition is not just about the negative. It's not just about what's not going to be there, which is police and jails. It's about the positive, what will be there instead, which is social safety nets, deeply affordable housing, social housing, mental health services, drug treatment, alternate crisis response teams. That is abolition, to build, if not this, the then what, and that's the goal. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. I think it's important for folks to know and understand.
So can you tell me a little bit about District 1? You've already talked a little bit about District 1, but can you tell me specifically about like the unique challenges and opportunities presented in your district?
Yes, so CD1 is at the heart of the city of LA, and it outlines a lot of downtown. Doesn't have downtown, but a lot of our neighborhoods are right on the outside. So what we represent from Highland Park through Glassell Park, Lincoln Heights, Cypress Park, MacArthur Park, Pico Union, Westlake, Chinatown, Montecito Heights, Solano Canyon, University Park, and many more neighborhoods, over 22. And our north side of the district is very much higher income. So we're talking everything from above Chinatown and up. And even, I would say, even Lincoln Heights and up is much higher income. It's single family homes.
Right.
My neighborhood, very like houses are selling for over easy $1 million. Yeah. So that's what it looks like. Wow. Every Chinatown and south is very much apartment buildings, very much migrant communities, monolingual Spanish speaking communities. We have a spectrum of a lot of elders, but also a lot of young people and kids, and very low income. So that's what I'm straddling: a high income single family homes neighborhoods, and then a lot of apartment buildings and low income, mostly migrant communities. And if you were to break up all the green space equally in CD1 with everybody would get a piece of paper size amount of green space. Right. Which I say that to say that we don't have a lot of green space in our district for our communities to access, especially on our south side where most people don't have front yards or backyards. Yeah. And, you know, we have, we're in the top 6, I think, of the districts that have received some of the highest eviction notices filed. We have also, because we outline downtown, so from Chinatown to Westlake, those are like some of the hottest pieces of land where buildings are selling for over $12 million, you know, land that's bare, over $10 million. And so you'll see in parts of like Chinatown, MacArthur Park, and Westlake, where you have just buildings that are sitting empty. Business buildings. We have a high business vacancy rate in some of these neighborhoods because landlords want to make money, and so they're waiting to rent it or to sell the building off to the highest bidder. But so that's also like leave some of our communities like sitting empty. Like Chinatown, there's big buildings where they're sitting empty. And also we have a district where we have several hundred units that are on the brink of expiring from what are called affordable housing covenants. So there are housing that's only affordable because of these covenants that exist. Many of them are expiring, over 6,000 in the city of Los Angeles. So that means that once those affordable housing covenants expire, your rent can go up. And so we have places like in Chinatown, a building called Hillside Villa, where the affordable housing covenant expired. And now, you know, you have the owner of the building who's raised rent on folks 200 and 300%. He can do that because the covenant has expired. And so this is a huge city issue, but in our district, we have several hundred buildings, and Hillside Villa is a canary in the coal mine of like, what do we do? Because people are there's evictions filings there, and we're working with the tenants and trying to move forward a process of acquisition, all these things, but it's like that is facing a lot of our buildings. And the last thing I'll say is, I mentioned it earlier, but the fact that landlords would let buildings just become dilapidated and have rats and infestation and mold and the carpet's terrible. But they do that so that people move out, offering people $6,000 so that they move out of their apartment. That's insane. Cash for keys. Yeah. So there's our district is in the battleground of the housing crisis, of the eviction to homelessness pipeline. And also of the overdose epidemic. We have MacArthur Park that experiences several overdoses every day. And the busiest fire station in the country of the United States of America is the one that services the MacArthur Park neighborhood. Right. And that is because of all the calls, because of the open air drug use and overdoses. And we have a plan, a MacArthur Park overdose prevention strategy that we're beginning to implement. But these are the struggles of our district, and the average median income is $32,000 for that district, which is very low in a city where you need at least 70 or more to live.
Super expensive.
Yeah.
Super expensive. Anyone who's ever tried to move into it knows the struggle. One thing I would like to ask you as well is navigating that spectrum as a representative for like your local community. What has that been like, from having to be the representative for people who, they're in that, they're buying those $1 million properties, to people who, are very much struggling on their day to day, whether they're homeless or they're just struggling to pay rent and they're living paycheck to paycheck. What has it been like being their voice, being the voice for that spectrum of people within your own community?
It's a balancing game, not a game, a balancing act to an extent. I will say, I live in the higher income part of the district, but I have the privilege I've lived in the same house my entire life, and the needs are very much different from those areas. And so we just try to meet people where they're at, and like I tell people, we're here at your service. Yeah. And whatever that service looks like, and if that's something that we're responsible for, we will take it on. The needs are much different in the north side, although there's still a lot of people who are being pushed by the economic factors and economic challenges and housing crisis up in the north as well. So we're supporting tenants and tenant crises that are happening in the north, but in the north it's different than the amount of need in the south. And the south, it's more of empowering people because politicians go down there, but there's really not an explanation of what even this politician is. And I will say that our Latino communities, like, they've welcomed me with open arms. But I tell them, you have to demand from us. What do you need? And there are voices, there are community leaders, but most of our Latino community, monolingual Spanish-speaking community that pay taxes, that just are giving to this city, they don't ask of the city, they don't ask of the representatives. And so a lot of it has been to educate them. This is what our office is responsible for. These are the things that you should be calling us for. Street cleaning, trash, fixing the light. Yes, you don't have to live in these conditions, and you calling us to tell us about it helps us make sure that we can follow through. But I will say, for the entire district, it's also very much listening to the needs of the community and what they need. But it's also, the hard part is to lead them. Is sometimes to lead into the direction that you want people to go. I would knock on doors in the north and the south, and they would tell me, why do you want to defund the police? I'm getting mailers that say, you want to defund the police. Why do you want to do that? And my answer would be, ma'am, you just told me 15 minutes, for 15 minutes, that you don't feel safe walking your child to school. You just told me you don't feel safe because of all the people experiencing homelessness on the street. Yet in no other moment in history have we given the police more money than we do today. So yes, I want to reassess the budget. Yes, I think we need to be investing in the things that will make you feel safe, in getting people housed, in cleaning the street. We can't do that when a quarter of our budget goes to one department. And so that's what I mean about leading them. It's like, listening to them.
And giving them fresh perspectives on things. Because I think that's the hardest thing to do, ultimately. Trying to get people to just wrap their head around a concept and really just trying to be like, look, I'm not the enemy here. I'm not the enemy because of this. I'm the one who's trying to help you. Who's trying to give you the information that you need.
That's the hard part. The leading them to somewhere you want them to go.
Exactly. Now, moving on to our next question, and thank you again so much for your answer. So how has it been, ensuring that diverse voices are heard in crucial voices are heard, right? Or like minority voices are heard in local government. You talked a little bit about that, but can you expand on it? Like, what has that been like?
Yes, that has been, so it comes out in different ways. One, it's just from the beginning, making sure that there's translation at the committees that I chair or that I sit on. Making sure that we have adequate translation at our city council meetings. We are going through two things. One of them is redistricting reform and part of that is community engagement. So making sure to advocate that, okay, yes, these meetings need to be translated and the materials need to be translated beforehand so people can read them.
Yeah.
And even in making sure that there's access to indigenous languages. We have dozens of languages in MacArthur Park, many of them indigenous from, different parts of the world and country. So at every step of the way is to make sure that we advocate for more access, not just even translation, but even being able to give virtual public comment. If you can't come in because you're working, but you want to give public comment, you can give it on the phone. Right. Those are the most basic things. But we've also been pushing and supporting a language access plan with the city of Los Angeles to make sure that we can move forward. All the departments and all of our movement, is based off a language access plan that will include enough access for the many languages that exist in the city of Los Angeles. And I think it's also having meetings in community and having meetings outside of the regular business hours. We function from a 9 to 5 in our committee meetings, in our council meetings. Most people work a 9 to 5, a 10 to 6, a 12 to 8. And so thinking what can we do to bring more of these meetings to the community at our recreational parks on a Saturday? So these are the different things that we're trying to employ, because access, for some, it's better that community doesn't have more access, right? Because then you have a mirror in front of your face. Right. We welcome that because it gives us more power, or at least on some of the progressives. Right. We can't do this alone, and the more people that are there, it just gives more power to that issue.
Right. Is there anything that you would like to specifically tell the Latino community within your district? Yeah. Is there anything you would like to emphasize to them, in a message you would like to give them?
Yes, what I would say is that there's power in numbers. And we need to organize ourselves, but not just with our community, with all of the communities that have been disadvantaged, that have been impacted, that are most disproportionately impacted, like our Black and our indigenous communities. We need to come together to really demand the living conditions that we need. Right. Because the living conditions that you're experiencing don't have to be that way. They are political decisions. Right. And they've been being made for decades against our communities. So I would just say, please get engaged. Yeah. You pay taxes, or your kids pay taxes. You have been contributing one way or another to this city, this community. You deserve to get something back. It's often I will equate it to imposter syndrome, como yes. Yo no lo merezco. No es mío, eso es de ellos. Yeah. Yo no soy ciudadano, yo no soy de aquí.
I never really thought of it that way, but you're absolutely correct. It's definitely imposter syndrome. That's what I've always felt. At least when it comes to my family. That's why they don't engage, right? It's either fear, or they just feel like, no somos de aquí ni de allá. Yeah. It's that mentality of just there's this song that my dad loves to hear, and I'm just I wonder if everyone, and he's and he hears it because I feel like that's what so many people in our communities have just internalized, and it's that song Jaula de Oro, you're living in this golden cage, right? You finally made it to this country that where you want to, where you struggle to come to, and give your kids all of these opportunities, but you yourself don't feel like you belong and can engage, despite the fact that you pay taxes here, despite the fact that you contribute to the economy here. It just, you don't feel deserving of whatever's happening in the community, right? Yeah. And that just needs to change, It
does.
Like you said, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. I agree. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but that's really, I love that you said that, because that's honestly what it feels like, and what I've come to understand, at least from, the generation of my parents' generation, and it's only until recently that they're kind of understanding their power. And even then it's hard, for them to really fully grasp the concept of your voice is important. What you want is important. You see the problems, but you don't actively try to go out there and talk to representatives. My parents didn't even know. So we have a great council member here in our district, for my district. His name is Tyrone Hampton. And he actively does community walks. He has neighborhood walks. He engages the community to come out there and just walk. One of the walks happened down the street from my house, and my parents had no idea that it was happening. And I'm just but you have all these problems that you want to talk to about. He's right there. Why don't you go? He's literally down the street. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. Someone else will tell him. I'm like, you don't know that.
And we need to continue to empower our families and community to do that.
Yeah.
Because, government so blatantly has such disregard for our community. When you think about street vendors.
Yeah.
Street vendors in all of the county of Los Angeles are treated horribly, where their food is taken, thrown away. Instead of investing more in the infrastructure that will make that economy thrive, you just see continual lag in policy that will actually create that investment. And that's just one example of our migrant community and our Latino community being, disregarded. But also even when we want to invest in services for our immigrant communities.
Right.
I've had council members talking about it, and they're like, well, I don't know if we should spend our precious resources on this particular program and expanding it. But then, what I responded to that was like, migrant communities pay so much in taxes, millions of dollars in taxes every year. If you don't want to give money that you're saying is precious resources of their tax dollars, then give all their tax money and invest it in that community.
Right.
And there was nothing that was said, but that's just one voice.
Right.
But we have to continue to empower communities to speak for themselves.
Right.
And I'm an imposter. Yeah. This seat was not built for me.
Yeah.
From my background to the people that supported me to my policies, I was not meant to be in this place. But recognizing that I am helps me then break the culture that makes it better for more people to come in. Yeah. Breaking the work culture, breaking the culture of building a team. Who represents you on the team? What are the values of that? The things that you get to say from the bully pulpit.
Right.
It makes this difficult process worth it, but I'm just one voice. So we need many, many people to demand what they deserve, because they do in this country.
Right.
They have the protections to demand, unlike other countries that many of them come from, where they don't have that protection, that freedom.
Right.
You have the freedom here for the most part, so demand what you need.
Right. So you touched on imposter syndrome. Tell me, how in this seat that you're at, can you expand on that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that feeling of you being, like you said, in this seat that is not made for you? Mm-hmm. How has it been? What has been some of the struggles that you've had to overcome there with yourself and with others?
Well, before I figured that out, because it took me, we've been in here for 10 months.
Right.
It took me a long time into this 10 months to figure that out. Because, almost everything we do is against the grain.
Right.
And it's not because we're doing anything bad, but it's because we're fighting for communities and policies and visions and budgets that haven't been advocated for before. And so once I realized, okay, this is not, this was not built for people like me, for me, it helped me then navigate the space better. It felt like I had a weight off my shoulders, because it felt like I kept doing everything wrong.
Right.
But after that realization of like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just not doing it the way that they want me to do it, or I'm not doing what they want me to do. Then I realized, saying that I'm an imposter, I don't feel bad about it.
Right.
I feel very clear-eyed and clear-visioned about it.
Right.
And knowing that, yes, this government was not, when it was created, they didn't imagine someone like me or my people here.
Right.
And that's okay. And I will not curse on here, but one of the slogans.
You're fine to do so. I just want to say.
One of the mottos within our office is like, we're gonna fuck it up in a good way.
Right. Because
what we mean by that is that we're gonna break things that need to be broken along the way, so that this becomes better.
Right.
More survivable for others, but also that this bureaucracy machine starts moving differently. And in order for it to move differently, you need to break things, change things. And sometimes just get rid of things and not replace them. Sometimes replace them with better things. But that's why I say, like, I can recognize that I'm an imposter, but it's one of my tools to help me navigate the space better, more strategically, more intentionally.
Beautiful answer, I gotta tell you. So tell me, as someone who I consider like a successful Latina in politics, what is some advice that you would like to give, aspiring, minorities who are looking to be in political office, right? What would you say to them? What do you say to people who, in general, just want to make that change in the community, women, people who are out here, trying to make a change? What is your advice to them? And at the same time, can you tell me a little bit about what inspires you to keep going on your journey?
Yeah, what tips or advice I would give is that you have to believe in yourself. By that I mean like try to build your gut. Like learn to trust your gut. Learn to also really know what are your values.
Right.
And because you're going to be tested. Every single decision you make is a test on your values, on the future that you want to see. And the more that you are grounded in what your values, what your vision are, what you want to see, and the more that you're grounded with people who are directly impacted by these issues, because those are the people that are closest to the problems, are the closest to the solutions, that will help you when you're in. And when you are confronted and pressured by special interest groups to make decisions, when you're confronted and pressured by the bureaucracy to make certain decisions, those are the people and those are the skills, the values that will help you trust yourself and making sure that you make the right decision. Because sometimes like these decisions are so impactful for millions and millions of people. And if you're comfortable leaving people behind, that's on you.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with giving more money to failed systems, that's on you. And you can live with that, okay. But that's why I say, like, really investigate yourself and connect with the communities that are most directly impacted. But before that, for running for office, you need people who are gonna, one, believe in you and throw down with you. Yeah. Because you need people to donate to you, and you need people to knock doors with you. You need people to send text messages for you. And I'll take a step back. It's not for you. It is for the vision that you have, that a collective has for your neighborhood, for your district, for your city. I hated doing call time. Call time is when you call people and ask them for money for your campaign. And what really made that easier was when people would remind me, like, look, this isn't for you. This money's not for you. This money is for the platform that y'all have, the vision that you're trying to do, what you're trying to bring to the city. Right. And that was, okay, great. But as you're doing whatever work that you're doing, start building the group of people that are gonna throw down with you, because you'll need them to support you. You'll need them to help you. I called people when I was working at Universal, like I called everybody. Even
you called your network.
My network, yeah. Yes. And I would say, I was fortunate that in the work that I did, I worked on ballot initiatives before. So I co-wrote Measure J. I worked on Prop 64. I worked on campaigns that were big. There were big investments by people who were high income. And I think that's what also gave me a little bit of an edge, where because of the nonprofit work I was doing, I knew people who could make donations to open up what's called an independent expenditure. And that independent expenditure helped me. It's like a political action committee, a PAC, but these different entities can be created to support your campaign. That network helped me with an independent expenditure. I still got outraised 2-1.
Right.
Like, he took money from developers, had max out upon max out upon max out, and he had IEs that opened him up for Gil from the unions and other groups. So it was very challenging in that way to raise money. Right. Like, it was hard on me to raise money, but just even my network, like the people that I actually knew, besides that, like
it was
the IE stuff,
really very grassroots.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we have what's called matching funds in the city of LA, where if you donate, it gets matched up to 6 to 7 times.
Wow.
So that was very helpful. But I would just say, build your community, build your community that's going to help you throw down with their time and their skills. Build a community network that's going to give you money, and begin to really trust yourself. Because you have a team of people and you have a team that is phenomenal, but in the end you have to make the decision, and you're the one that has to carry the face of this. And it depends on where you run. Some cities are smaller, some cities are bigger. LA, we are full-time. We represent 250,000 people. Some other cities are smaller, part-time, not as many people. And the last thing I'll say is, ask yourself what it is that you want to do.
Right.
Do you want to work on local issues? Do you want to work on state legislative issues? Do you want to work at federal issues? We need people at the federal level.
Right.
We need people at the federal level. I mean, all across this country, because there are people at the federal level who have been serving over 30 years, 50 years. We as a country have not been advancing because you have the same people having the same conversations over after decade after decade after decade.
I'm going to tell you right now, I mean, this is me. Like, for example, our Supreme Court system, them serving for their whole life, that's, I don't know, there's a whole other issue. But federally, on the federal level, and just overall government, that's always something I'm just like, why? die.
Yeah.
Like, let these people rest.
Yes.
Please. Like, let them retire. There's, there was this one quote that I remember so vividly, and it was actually like, I was seeing I think it was like a documentary, and one of the things that was said was just like, it's astounding for the USA to be such a young country. Mm-hmm. It always has old people at the helm. You know? And I'm just like, that is so true.
We're young, but old souled.
Yeah.
Old bad soul that doesn't want to evolve.
Yeah, like that is just stuck in the trenches of what it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's so, that's really what it is at the end of the day. And like, it's one of those things where you're just like, and there's people like from our generation, it's just like, America at this point is just like, it's a third world country wearing a Gucci belt. Like, and I'm just like, some days I just find it so hard to argue with that. Like I do. And it's sad to say, but it's like, you're not, there's days where you're not wrong.
Yeah.
There's days where you're not wrong, and I can't argue against that.
They
sorry.
are not. No, they're not. I mean, we have 46,000 people experiencing homelessness just in the city of Los Angeles.
Just in the city
Over
of Los Angeles.
70,000 in the entire county of Los Angeles, and it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, and with all the money that our state like just gets, and I think that the California in and of itself can be its own country.
Yeah, we're like the sixth or fifth like largest economy in the world. But you look at the state level, you look at the budget. One of my sheroes, LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, says that a budget is a statement of your values.
Right.
Look at the state budget. How much we put into prisons, prison guards. How much a quarter of our budget at the LA City level goes to LAPD. We just bought them an 18th helicopter. We gave them $20 million to buy new cop cars. And so, again, these are budget and policy decisions. Like, really, the way our budget is built is the way that you are being served or not served. So, people, I don't think people have made that connection, but it really is like people complain about paying taxes, but you never complain about where they go. Yeah. You never call for them back, so we gotta call for them back.
Right. No, and that's a great point to talk about. Is there like we're getting to our last round of questions here because I know you're busy. One question I do want to ask you is, what has been a rewarding moment for you in your position? What has been a moment where you've been like, aha, this is it. This is this moment that I've worked towards. And that really illustrates all that hard work and everything that you've put in. Where has that manifested itself?
It's manifested in a couple ways, in a couple votes. Yeah. One of them is when we were having a discussion around pretrial. Right. Pretrial reform. The city of Los Angeles getting sued around no money bail. Right. And I had worked on pretrial reform policies for years before that. And so I was at the table when we were discussing this lawsuit and was able to push for the city to move in a better direction. Right. Literally had to have a heavy hand in the way that the direction of the conversation went so that we would move towards a care first response around pretrial reform. Right. And so that was one of those moments I was like, damn, okay, it's worth it because we're here. Because before I was just pushing from the outside, but now I get to decide on this issue on the inside. Another time was the budget decision where I was the only council member to vote no on a budget. And I voted no on the budget because we constantly bring in city departments, Department of Aging, Department of Street Services, Street Lighting, and we can say, hey, why can't you do your job? Yeah. Why haven't you been able to fix these sidewalks, the lights? Why is it taking 6 months? Right. But we give them crumbs for budgets. Right. And so for me, it was like voting no was a stance to show that I don't believe that this budget meets our values. Right. I don't believe, like, I can't go back and tell my constituents that that I can do X, Y, and Z because we have not invested in doing X, Y, and Z at the city. Right. And so that was I had a lot of anxiety around that vote before I came into office. Once I was in office, I let people thought I was going to be coming in like a bull in a china shop, but we are much more strategic. My team and I much more diplomatic. And so from the beginning, I told people when I got in, I am not going to vote for a budget that gives any new money to police. I'm just not going to do that. So people knew where I was coming from, and I got a lot of support from all of my colleagues, even the ones who are more conservative, because I said what I was going to do. And, I signed pledges saying that I was going to do this. And so it was another moment of like, it was a good moment to take a stance for a community and hopefully empower our other departments in this next budget cycle to demand for more. Right. You know, we have some of the lowest paid workers compared to other cities. We are not competitive, and that was a moment. And I will say that just being a young Latina plus size woman as a council member, I think even as much shit as I take and as from all the things, my decisions, from the way that I look, like for me, I just hope that other people can see themselves in me so that they can do it too. Like we need more people,
Right.
more perspective, more experiences, trans people, gender not conforming people. Like, you know, we have 7 Latinos on the council. That's great. But just because we look like you doesn't mean we care about the same things as you do. And so we need more people, people.
And that's honestly the mistake that I feel like a lot of people make. Like, at least when it, like, for example, again, I'm bringing this back to my own experience, my own parents. Like, they see someone that looks like them and that comes from the same background as them. And they expect them to be that voice for them in office, which in some cases, in a lot of cases, it's true, right? But then they're always shocked when that's not exactly how it turns out, you know? And it's just like, oh, but I thought that they were gonna do this. And it's just like, no, like people have their own agendas, right? When they go into office. And sometimes, and most, if not sometimes, and even most times, like, it's not always gonna correlate with what you thought that they would do for you. You know what I mean? So like that's incredibly important to bring up.
Yeah, and I bring that up so that people think about, like, who you're gonna vote for. Maybe someone doesn't look like you, but you know their platform is the vision that you want to see.
Right.
Then perhaps you should vote differently, because I think time and time again we see on the city council in LA where they could look like us, they could chair the housing committee for 9 years and be a Latino and do absolutely nothing for renters, and the largest renter group are Latinos.
Yeah.
So you can miss me with identity politics because they haven't come through for our community.
Right. Sorry. Now, second to last, what I would like to ask you is, what are some of the things that you're fighting for now, and what are some things that you want to do in the future for your own constituents?
So we just finished the first budget cycle that we are part of, and we got the $15 million for alternate crisis response. My ultimate goal is to establish a citywide alternate crisis response team and system.
Right.
We've developed a vision of enhancing our dispatching center, of creating these teams with clinicians, with community intervention workers. So the goal really is there to implement that.
Right.
The second goal that we have is around protecting affordable housing, which is protecting these affordable housing covenants, protecting our renters, keeping people housed. Because right now we don't house people at the rate that they're becoming homeless. We can house 20,000 people and 25,000 people will fall into homelessness.
Right.
So we're just not catching up. So preventing that is really big for me. We have a community advocacy team that engages in that and helps tenants make sure that they know their rights. They do habitability standards, but they also help with small businesses and making sure that they can survive gentrification issues, get different investments so that they can, make it through the different challenges and changes.
Yeah.
Next is safe street infrastructure, more access to different modes of mobility. We want to create the largest pedestrian walkway in MacArthur Park. Wow. And we want to close down the Wilshire Boulevard that separates MacArthur Park and give it back to the community for more green space. It's one of the densest parts of the entire county of Los Angeles and the city of Los Angeles. And so that's really big for us. And creating more bike lane infrastructure, creating more slow street infrastructure. I'm on the transportation committee and have been really pushing hard, especially around our schools, to do that, which it costs about $125,000 to $250,000 to put in one speed bump. And so I think it's important to share the costs. It takes us 7 years to fix a sidewalk, at least in the city of Los Angeles. So we have a lot of jobs that are open. So if anybody's interested in working for the city of Los Angeles, we got jobs upon jobs and job availability. Some have competitive wages. Most are we're still working on. And the last thing I'll say is animal services. I oversee the Neighborhood and Community Enrichment Committee, which oversees LA Animal Services and many departments, but we have, our shelters are packed.
Yeah.
They are at the brim. Some have cages with 2 dogs in them. So please, if you can adopt that, we're working to create more thriving wages in there, more people to walk the dogs, to get them out, to invest in the shelter infrastructure. That's really big. And obviously, I already talked about the MacArthur Park overdose prevention strategy, working with their firefighters and community members to address that issue. But there's just a lot. Like I said, I came in with one expertise, but really have had to build a team that are experts on these issues, but also become an expert myself, considering I have to chair, and be a part of committees that are making billion-dollar decisions.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. And in closing, what message would you like to convey to our listeners, especially those who may be inspired by your journey?
I would say shoot your shot, but do it intentionally and do it for the right reasons. If you're doing it to advance yourself, I don't know how much joy you'll get out of this. Your job might be easier because you might go with the flow, but you don't have to. If you want to do this, you don't have to do it the way that people have been doing it for many years. I didn't take any special interest group money, no oil money, no cop money. I didn't because I wanted to go inside and not have to feel that pressure. Right. So just know that you can do this the way that you want it. I ran my campaign the exact way that I wanted to run it with my team. From the money we took, to the endorsements we got, to the people who we brought on our team. And that was very much different from the way that things are running. And so what? We took out an incumbent. We did something that was only done 3 times in the history of LA. You can do it too. Yeah. Just build your community. Take the lead, follow the lead from people who have been directly impacted. Build your table. That's what I did. When I did policy work, it was just about building tables of people that agreed that we needed to do something. Right. And this is the way that we were going to do it. So involve yourself with organizations. Involve yourself, and depend on what issue is important to you. Whether it's housing, whether it's street vendors, whether it's criminal justice. There are movements on all of these things. Find your space, start building your community, and do it. And I would say that just remind yourself, they didn't expect us to do this or to be here, and it's gonna be hard. And you're gonna question yourself a lot, but that's why start building your gut muscle. Right. Because in the end, that's one of the things that's gonna, and I don't say that lightly, trusting my gut even helps me decide how to engage people, because you can never know. So just believe in yourself. You got this, you could do it, but build community, because you can't do anything by yourself.
And that's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
So we have reached our end of our show. And I just want to say thank you so much, Eunisses, for coming and for sharing your perspective and your story and your journey and all of the amazing things that you've been doing for District 1. I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you.
In your journey. I know you're killing it. I see that you're killing it. And I also want to give a special shout out to Chelsea, because she's been our liaison here, and I appreciate her being my main mode of communication and being here while we're doing this interview.
My comms director.
Yes. And overall, I just want to say, is there any place that you want your constituents to reach you at? Is there a social media site or somewhere that you would like to guide them to just talk to you, DM you, wherever they want to meet you? Is there anything you want to shout out there?
Yes, I'm going to shout out our Instagram at CD1 Los Angeles. Is that right, Chelsea? CD1 Los Angeles. We're also on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. Just, CD1 Los Angeles. We also have a website, CD1 Los Angeles. LA, what is it, Chelsea?
Okay.
LA City. You can Google our website at CD1 Los Angeles.
I will put it as a handle.
Thank you.
I will put it as a handle. And I'll make sure with Chelsea that I spelled everything
Chelsea.
right. I promise. It's good. We only have muscle memory for so much. But overall, again, thank you so much, Eunisses. And that is our podcast here on Entre Comillas. We're so happy to have had you. And we'll be seeing you guys on the next show with another amazing guest to talk to. And you can reach us on our own social media handles. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for being part of today's show.